World War I, the battle reports that quietly contradicted each other. When the First World War ended, governments across Europe faced a task almost as daunting as the war itself: explaining what had happened. The conflict had produced an unprecedented volume of written material. Daily battle reports, casualty returns, operational maps, medical records, and officer diaries filled entire archives. It seemed, at first glance, that future historians would have absolute clarity. They did not. When these records were later compared, often decades after the war, a troubling pattern emerged. Reports describing the same battles frequently contradicted one another, sometimes in fundamental ways. Advances recorded at headquarters never occurred on the ground. Casualty figures shifted repeatedly. Entire units appeared successful on paper, while, in reality, they had been destroyed. These contradictions were not minor clerical errors. They influenced decisions while battles were still being fought and shaped how the war was later remembered. During the war, information flowed upward through a rigid command structure. Frontline officers submitted reports to battalion headquarters. Battalions summarized these for divisions, and divisions sent condensed versions to Corps and Army Command. At every stage, detail was lost. Reports were often written hours or days after events had occurred, sometimes by officers who had not personally witnessed the action. Communication lines were frequently severed by artillery fire. Maps were outdated or inaccurate. Timekeeping was inconsistent, with attacks reported as simultaneous when they were not. In July 1916, British General Sir Hubert Gough privately admitted the limitations of this system, writing that reports from the front are often hopelessly confused, owing to the fog of war and the destruction of communications. Yet these reports were still treated as authoritative. The Battle of the Somme offers one of the clearest examples of contradictory reporting. On the morning of July 1, 1916, British troops went over the top following a week-long artillery bombardment. High Command believed German defenses had been largely destroyed. Early divisional reports reinforced this belief. Some commanders claimed that enemy trenches had been captured and that resistance was weakening. One preliminary report stated that the attack progressed satisfactorily in several sectors. Frontline testimony tells a different story. Captain Charles Carrington later wrote that his men were mown down in rows before they reached the German wire. Private Albert Andrews described the advance as walking into a wall of bullets. By mid-morning, entire battalions had ceased to function. Yet because headquarters believed progress was being made elsewhere, the offensive continued throughout the day. That decision was based on reports that did not reflect reality. By nightfall, the British Army had suffered nearly 60,000 casualties, including over 19,000 dead. The scale of the disaster only became fully apparent days later, when casualty returns caught up with events. Official summaries released afterward avoided detailing the contradictions. Instead, they framed the Somme as a necessary attritional battle, a narrative that relied heavily on selective reporting. A year earlier, at the Battle of Loos in 1915, inaccurate reporting had already shown how dangerous this system could be. This was the first time British forces deployed poison gas on a large scale. Initial reports to command claimed the gas had been released successfully and that enemy defenses were compromised. Medical officers, however, recorded something else entirely. Dr. H.S. Sautar wrote that British casualties showed clear signs of chlorine exposure, even in areas where gas was supposedly effective against German positions. In reality, shifting winds had blown the gas back toward British trenches. Entire units were incapacitated before they advanced. Despite this, command reports continued to describe gas deployment as effective, and similar tactics were approved again under comparable conditions. Here, contradictory documentation did not merely distort history. It delayed tactical lessons and directly increased casualties in subsequent operations. At Verdun, contradictions appeared not only within armies but between them. French reports emphasized controlled defense and the successful rotation of exhausted units. General Philippe Pétain famously declared, "They shall not pass," reinforcing the image of disciplined resistance. German reports, meanwhile, emphasized steady territorial gains and the wearing down of French forces. Later analysis revealed that both narratives were incomplete. French rotation systems repeatedly failed, leaving soldiers at the front far longer than intended. German advances were often marginal and came at enormous cost. Because higher command on both sides believed their systems were functioning as reported, the battle dragged on for 10 months. Post-war French historian Marc Bloch observed that what command believed and what the soldier endured were often two different wars. Casualty reporting was among the most unreliable aspects of WW1 documentation. Men listed as missing might be prisoners, dead, or simply cut off. Wounded soldiers were often counted multiple times as they moved between aid stations. In some cases, casualties were underreported to maintain morale or avoid scrutiny. British military historian Basil Liddell-Hart later noted that the true cost of operations was frequently unknown to those ordering their continuation. As a result, offensives sometimes continued under the false assumption that units remained combat effective. Reinforcements were delayed or misdirected. Medical resources were deployed based on outdated figures. These were not deliberate deceptions, but systemic failures with real consequences. After the war, military institutions faced a choice. They could openly reconcile contradictory reports and accept that decisions had been made on incomplete or inaccurate information. Or they could produce coherent official histories that preserved institutional credibility. They chose the latter. The British official history of the war, published over many volumes, acknowledged confusion in places, but avoided addressing how contradictory reporting shaped command decisions in real time. The contradictions remained in archives, available to researchers, but rarely highlighted. The war was not falsified, it was simplified. The First World War left behind one of the most detailed documentary records in history. Yet that abundance did not guarantee truth. Battles such as the Somme, Loos, and Verdun were shaped not only by artillery and manpower, but by information that arrived late, incomplete, or wrong. The contradictions within those records were never fully resolved because resolving them would have meant confronting uncomfortable realities about responsibility and control. The unanswered questions of the Great War are not hidden in secret files. They are written openly, often more than once, in reports that never quite agreed.